Welcome, everyone, and good afternoon to you all. Welcome to another Griffith Alumni Professional Development webinar for 2023. I'm really excited about today's topic, becoming a master mentor. It's an important topic, and I'm delighted to bring it to you. My name is Nicole Graham, and I'm a career development practitioner who is extremely enthusiastic about mentoring. Working across education and private practice has enabled me to really see the way that different organizations embrace the power of mentoring, and to see the way that they use it to transform the individuals in their workplaces and in their communities. Mentoring, whether it's formal or informal, challenges us to do better and be better in our professional lives, and that often flows into our personal lives and into our role as citizens. As mentors and mentees, we keenly feel our connection to community, and the particular community that I am proud to be a part of is, of course, the Griffith Industry Mentoring Community, which is over 1,000 mentors strong and has been supporting Griffith students and graduates for more than 28 years. In just a few moments, I will introduce our guest speakers who will share their deep expertise on mentoring with us. But before we start, I want to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the various lands on which we are all located today. I acknowledge that I am hosting this webinar from the lands of the Yugambeh peoples, and I pay my respect to the elders past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. In addition to these online webinars, many of you will know that we host a variety of networking and professional development events throughout the year. A great way to stay across these opportunities is our LinkedIn showcase page. If you aren't following this, please jump on now. There's a link in the chat function. Now, if you are new to Teams Live, there are a few things that I can tell you to help you make the most of it. You can ask questions in the Q&A panel on your screen. Please ask your questions throughout the presentation, and we'll share them with our speakers to answer at the end. If you would like to remain anonymous when asking your question, please tick the anonymous box before you post. I will also let you know that this session is being recorded and will be shared on our YouTube channel. We'll email you in a few weeks when that is uploaded and available. It's best if you subscribe to the channel to be notified immediately, and you can also see the other webinars on offer, particularly those that we recorded last year and earlier this year. Now, I am delighted to introduce our first guest speaker, Sean Jacobs. Sean Jacobs is a Port Moresby-born Australian writer, government relations, and public policy specialist. He has worked with all levels of government in PNG, Fiji, New Zealand, and Australia. Sean began as a Griffith industry mentor in 2013 while working on the G20 task force at the Australian Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet. Since this time, he has served as a ministerial advisor in offshore security operations in PNG and leading emissions reduction and sustainability responses at Dunedin City Council. He currently works as Principal Advocacy and Major Projects Advisor at the City of Moreton Bay, primarily on the 2032 Olympic and Paralympic Games and a range of other high priority infrastructure projects. Sean graduated from Griffith University with a Bachelor of Arts in International Relations in 2008 and is currently a student in the Griffith MBA program. So now I will ask Sean to unmute his microphone and hand over to Sean.
Terrific. Well, thank you very much, Nicole, for that introduction. And I presume that you can see my screen, or everyone on the chat is able to see my screen. And Roxy, thank you to you and your team as well for this opportunity. And Anna, it's great to be featuring alongside you as well. And of course, thank you everyone for tuning in or joining online, especially in your lunch break. As Nicole mentioned, my name is Sean Jacobs, so I've been proudly a Griffith University mentor since 2013, and I started, as Nicole mentioned again, when I was working on the G20 task force at Department of the Prime Minister and Cabinet. And I guess in that time, I've been able to dragoon my lovely wife, Eloise, into the mentoring program, and she's been a proud Griffith University mentor for the past couple of years as well. But I think the important thing to note is just with the distance of time and looking back over the last sort of 10 years is, as Nicole mentioned, I've changed roles and functions a number of times and moved across various sectors and even moved internationally as well. And in that time, I've been able to stay connected to the mentoring program. So I think that sort of flexibility is fantastic, being able to cross sort of different sectors and industries and even just travel overseas, but stay connected to the mentoring program as well is, I think, tremendous. So there's obviously, quite a few topics to get through, and I'm not going to jump through or leap through everything that you see on your screen there, just in the interest of time. But what I've done is just cluster these into two things, the mentor and the mentee. And my slides are sort of quite brief, and I've only got a limited amount of time, so I thought I'd cut straight to it. I think the sort of starting point for the mentor is really these two questions in particular. In 2013, when I started my mentoring journey, I sort of had a bit of an element of self-doubt. I'd only been out of university for a few years. But the sort of more I thought about it, the more I realised that I actually had a lot more to contribute being in that sort of few years out of university, because I think, looking back on my own experience, I had people who were mentors or who were assigned to me or who people said that I should talk with, but they were essentially years ahead in terms of where they were in their careers. And, they'd left university a number of years ago, they'd had experience, they had networks, and they really didn't have that, I guess, that affinity with what my experience was coming out of university. And I'm not saying that you need to be young to be a mentor, that's certainly not the case, but I think the key thing is that affinity. So can you constructively talk to your younger self and even think or put yourself in those shoes about what advice that you'd give to yourself when you're at that stage of university studies, when you're quite limited in terms of your networks and some of your skills, etc. So I've seen a lot of mentees over the years. I don't know the exact number, but I think it'd be well in excess of 20, I guess, probably formally through the program, and I think probably closer to sort of 40, I guess, informally and outside of the program. They're all different, I guess, shapes and sizes in terms of skills, experience, and what they want to do and the sectors they want to get into. But I think to sort of play back and what I was thinking when, thinking about or contemplating what are the themes that join them all together, it's these three things that I think that cut across despite that diversity. They're all seeking experience. As I touched on before, they do need some refinement, and that's not casting aspersions. That's simply just saying that they need some guidance with CV writing, their communication skills, etc. And almost all of them, I'd say probably 98% of them, are always contemplating further study. So, they're just finishing a bachelor's degree and they want to go on to a master's, or just finishing a master's and thinking about a PhD. And I've got some thoughts on that in just 2 seconds. But I think the key thing here is, what I've tried to do is just try and marry this up with really functional things around mentoring and being asked over the years, what's a decent entry point? Where do I get started? And I've just lined these up against just some examples around the different themes that I've experienced with all of the mentees that I've come across. So in terms of experience, internship opportunities are much more readily available now than they certainly were back in 2008 when I finished. And so it's really trying to get into those or networks and trying to leverage those opportunities that I think are really unprecedented now. The other thing too is, as a mentor, you will have networks that simply a mentee will not have. So a lot of times with mentees that I've had, I might not have been able to help them directly, but I've been able to put them into different networks and other industry contacts with the networks that I have and I've generated throughout my professional career. I mean, one key example, or just recent one that springs to mind for me, was I had a mentee last year who was interested in joining the police force, and I had a lot of industry contacts in the police force. So I went through my sort of list and thought about, a younger police officer who just got out of the college about 2-3 years ago. So I figured out of all of them, it comes back to that affinity point that I raised before about connecting them with that experience just coming out of the academy. Would have been useful to hear from that person or one of my friends in those networks versus someone who was a bit more advanced in their career. So I think leverage your industry contacts and leverage those people in your networks. I think the thing on needs refinement, so I did touch on this before with CVs, cover letters, applications. If you're looking for a functional sort of form of assistance and an entry point that you can look at now, a really good thing to do is just do a CV health check or a cover letter health check. Doesn't have to be something live that they're applying for, but just to give you a good gauge around where the mentee's skills are at from a written perspective, which I think honestly tells you a lot about their communication skills, and giving some pointers as well. In terms of contemplating further study, so as I mentioned, I do have some thoughts about this, and I always sort of thought back to my own experience again, that when I was finishing university, I really wanted to actually enhance my professional experience. So although I was contemplating further study at the time, I really wanted to get into the workforce, build skills, add value, do all those sorts of things. So I do, and speaking honestly and frankly, try and encourage other mentees that I have is to actually do that will follow those same footpaths in terms of actually getting into the professional networks and so on. Now, just in terms of the last sort of point, I've just dropped this in here in terms of staying optimistic. So that's the other thing that I think is that affinity piece, or that key bit of the puzzle. Being a mentor, you're obviously so far down the track in terms of where your mentee is going to be, but you have to sort of think back to when you're leaving university or you're trying to get into a new sector, that you don't really have the skills or the networks or anything like that that you need to develop at that time. And again, that's not casting aspersions, it's just reflecting a reality. And there's so many opportunities for setback, but at the same time, there's so many opportunities for success as well. And so 10 years into my career, I'm really able to build those networks and connection points and really help my mentees in that respect as well. So that concludes I guess my remarks of the formal side, and I'll stop sharing, Nicole, and throw back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean, for sharing those valuable insights. I particularly love the 2 points about speaking to your younger self and staying optimistic. We hear so much gloom and doom around the labor market and career development that I think those points are really key. We'll save all the questions for you until we reach the end of the session. And I'm delighted next to introduce our second guest speaker, Anna Hebron. Values-based leader, strategy, culture, and transformation, NED and coach of Anna Hebron and Associates. Anna is a highly experienced public sector executive, strategic advisor, and non-executive director with over 20 years of experience producing quality results in complex environments. She has qualifications in governance and human resources and a track record of building collaborative partnerships and designing purposeful outcomes through simple processes. Anna has led major change projects and delivered transformational outcomes through business simplification, boosting employee engagement, and refining strategic alignment. Anna has been a mentor and trusted advisor throughout her career. She is often approached for guidance in her own practice, as well as Queensland representative for women on boards. She has an approachable style and a practical mindset, plus a curiosity to explore different options to resolving situations. With a bias for action and commitment to self-awareness and growth, she encourages those she mentors to be the drivers of their own careers and opportunities. Anna is also a Griffith alumnus and graduated with a Bachelor of Commerce in 1996. So now I will ask Anna to unmute her microphone and hand over to Anna.
Perfect. Thank you very much for having me here today. It's lovely. I was really delighted to receive the invitation. Just want to check that everybody can see my slides. Real good. Great. Okay. So I guess, I just wanted to pick up, I thought that was a lovely point, Sean, that you made around the connection, because that is such a beautiful thing about mentoring, is where you can offer that connections in your industry, I think is a really powerful thing. So in terms of, I've had a long career across the public sector, and a lot of my roles have been around sharing my experience and encouraging others to think a bit differently about their career. One of the other things that I have done, which has been fantastic, was do a lot of in-house coaching when I worked for Brisbane City Council for 10 years. And a lot of people, one of the questions they ask about is the difference between coaching and mentoring, and that's what I'll be having a chat to you about today. So when you look at the difference between coaching and mentoring, and I've just got some tasks basically there that do set them apart. In my mind, as a coach, if I have my coach hat on, it is a very specific program with a specific structure and a format that underpins it to help the coachee achieve their goals. On the other side, the mentoring relationship can be much more holistic and a much deeper relationship in terms of looking more broadly at where the mentee is at, looking at deepening their experience, their opportunities and their network. And that really exciting space, I think, to be around to watch someone's personal growth. So while you get that definitely in coaching, it's very much goal focused. Whereas the mentoring relationship to me has that broader approach where you actually dig a little deeper into the mentee's life and understand some of those more deeper values and deeper held importance that is sitting under there for them. And so that's why I think, you know, if I had to choose one or the other, coaching versus mentoring, I always would go on the mentoring side, because I do think it's a much more powerful relationship that can absolutely leverage more insights than traditional coaching. But just in terms of being able to set up a successful mentoring relationship, I mean, we all acknowledge, I think, that time is our most precious resource. So really being clear about that it actually takes a lot of time out of the mentor and the mentees, like given time. I mean, I don't know of a mentor that doesn't put in everything to their mentee in terms of really being thoughtful about what advice they're seeking, being thoughtful about how they can help, being really thoughtful about being that person who can provide some constructive guidance and feedback. But I think on the other side, one of the key things is to make sure we're being really clear about expectations. To me, that lack of clarity often leads us into a bit of a problem zone. So it's just being really clear and setting those boundaries to say that, you know, here's my availabilities, here's when here's when we'll catch up, and here's how I expect us to connect. And for some people that won't be sufficient. I have had times in the past where their expectations were a lot more than I can actually give at that particular time. So it's just really important to navigate those conversations in a really sensitive way. I think communication is key, knowing when you can reach out, when you can't reach out. I think for me, because I've had mentors throughout my career, and it's often you can have a bit of a reliance to think, oh, I'll just go and ask, you know, for example, Brett. I'll just go and ask Brett what he thinks about that. But there's always a second step where I think, hang on, is it something I do need to reach out for at this particular time? Do I need to come up with a solution myself? Do I need to phrase it in a different way? So I think it's always important to take that little bit of a pause in terms of reaching out. And I really like that last point there that talks about, you know, a good mentor listens. And I think that to me is one of the really special spaces and really special skills of fantastic mentors, is that ability to sit really quietly in presence with someone to help them deepen their self-awareness and to give them the space and time to come to certain realizations and certain insights themselves. For the mentee, again, you know, through Women on Boards, I've had a whole range of people come and ask me for mentoring, and it's always a bit disconcerting when someone comes to approach you and they don't really know what they want. You know, so I really encourage, you know, it's again for the mentee being really thoughtful about what you're seeking, defining where you're at, what you want to achieve, also putting in there the timing or the commitment that you would like to see in the relationship. And I think it's important to remember that, you know, it is a business relationship. Some mentors, absolutely, mentees develop into long-term friendships, and that's fine. But certainly in the beginning, it's really, really important to recognise that it is a professional relationship and being able to respect the professionals that you're talking to. I've got there, you know, look for a mentor in your professional network. But again, one thing I've always been really open to, and I kind of push people towards, is look for where there's a bit of a difference. You don't necessarily want to surround yourself with someone who is exactly like you, because that person doesn't exist. You want to also make sure that you're being challenged a bit. I think some people, you know, when you listen to diverse opinions and people have quite different experience from you, can actually provide you with amazing insight that you may never have thought if you're coming from a particular mindset or a particular industry. I think one of the other things that can be a bit problematic as well in the relationship is that openness to feedback and, constructive guidance. So some people in the past that I've mentored, when you get into those more vulnerable conversations, the walls go up and it's quite defensive, and you need to be able to work through that. But I think, as a mentee, you have to be prepared for a bit of honest feedback, honest conversations. Otherwise, you really have to think about why you're going into the relationship. If you're looking for validation, blanket validation, then I think you probably need to look elsewhere for that to come back to you. And then again, I love that quote at the end there, which, having a mentor isn't about being that person, but you're looking to absolutely learn from their skills, their experience, the knowledge that they have, the pitfalls that they've come across, how they navigated that, with a view to then embedding that and really embracing that as part of your own skill set and capability. So that's the end of my presentation, and I really look forward to answering some questions from you all. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks, Anna. Thanks so much. There's so many wonderful things in that presentation that really resonated. I think that that really huge truth of time as our most precious resource, and that both sides of the partnership really are seeking to bring value, but also to get some value, and really making it count. So many amazing points there. Thank you. We've got some questions coming in, and I just wanted to start just because I've got the spotlight a little bit, and I've got some curiosity and some questions of my own. So I hope you don't mind with starting with a couple of questions from me. So Sean, I would like to ask you a question first, and I suppose this kind of takes off from the really interesting career trajectory that you have had with a lot of really big shifts in different roles and different focuses. Can you talk a little bit about the role that mentorship played in that, whether you as a mentee or you as a mentor?
Yeah, no, thanks, Nicole. Really good question. I think sort of with the shifts, look, there's probably just a few things that kind of come out of it for me and my own sort of journey. One, it's obviously enhanced a lot of my networks. I think secondly, especially in those early days, I was able to use my mentor that wasn't part of the Griffith program, but just someone who I was prescribed in the organisation I was working for in Canberra. They were able to actually give me some very early guidance on actually shifting, that was even just internally within the Department of the Prime Minister and Cabinet, and actually offer some really short, discreet bit of advice there. And as I've sort of evolved, or I guess, grown professionally, I've drawn sort of different mentors from different parts and, like in different sectors, etc. But I think, part of a lot of it is just having those little connection points to get into those different industries. And sometimes there've been, people who have mentored me perhaps informally, but I think who have just enhanced my networks as well. But it's sort of just been a cascading or, leveling up sort of kind of thing where I've been able to grow the networks, which I think is really important, and hopefully reflected in my presentation. But I've relied on people who have given me guidance as well to form those networks. So yeah, Nicole.
That's beautiful. Thank you for that. And, so it seems like a bit of opportunistic mentoring and kind of looking for, those people who present themselves as guides along the way. So that's really beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And Anna, a question for you, because so much of your work has unfolded within complex organizations, and we do see more and more organizations adopting mentoring as a strategy that they use for employee performance and engagement. Within your experience with this, how would organizations measure and evaluate the success? So what would they look for to say, oh, look, mentoring is really working within our organization?
I think there's a few different measures. I mean, obviously they're seeking feedback from the mentor mentee on the way through, and what the growth and development they've seen, what the change is. I think one of the beautiful parts of it is really understanding, has it also lit someone's self-awareness button, in terms of they've suddenly realised they've got a bit of a blind spot, and now they're looking at that blind spot and looking at, what does that mean for me and what's the impact I'm having on people? I think that to me is where I think coaching is probably an easier thing to measure, because it's sort of very time bound, it's very clear, you have 2 goals, work related, over the 9 sessions we've got, bang, bang, bang. So I think it's about being a bit creative about how we look at that mentoring experience, and whether it's also then looking at someone's career or looking at them then getting involved in a greater way in the organisation. But I think also one thing, it's really important when I think back to my career in the Brisbane City Council, we had coaches, internal coaches, external coaches, mentoring was talked about, and so was allies. So again, it's being really clear about what's needed at this particular time and the why. Because sometimes it is around, if it's a career, it's about having an ally at a table who can put your name forward, which may be boosted by a mentor, but you'll get other things from the mentoring relationship. So to me, it's really important to separate those things out and then look at how we're actually measuring the impact.
So lots of different solutions there,
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
And I think, it can be quite a sensitive thing to navigate if someone is in the wrong format or structure for the wrong things. Like I've had to, in Brisbane City Council, stop a couple of coaching sessions because they were probably more looking for a therapist or more like emotional support. So, you need to also, I think, as a mentor, really respect that person. I always have this theory of, if I'm not, and, as a leader, if I'm not providing you with feedback about the impact you're having on others, particularly if that's negative. And again, as a mentor, if I'm not providing with feedback about what I'm seeing, I'm not doing my job well, and I'm actually not respecting you as my mentee. So, yeah.
So setting boundaries too for the relationship, for ourselves and for others as well.
Oh, absolutely. It's, just critical.
Some really interesting takeaways in that answer, Anna. Thank you. And it actually leads really well to one of the questions that's come through in the Q&A. So I'll stay on you for a moment. So this is a really interesting question. How much time commitment is needed for a mentor to have a positive effect on the mentee?
That is an interesting question. I think one session can often be enough to spark a flame in someone, but I think it's about being realistic. If someone is approaching you for some mentoring, really what time do you have? And being really honest about that yourself, because you can't sort of, spread yourself too thin. So if you do want to have a really good impact, it is acknowledging it's a longer term relationship. It's going to take time and effort on both parties to make sure it's right and it's working. So it's being first up very clear about what you can give and have you got the time. There's times that we don't. And a lot of people talk about volunteer board roles like that. It's like, I don't have the time, work's too busy, kids are little, parents are, needing me, etc. So I think it's just really important to think about the time that you've got to be able to give to that person and what that person is seeking. Because as I said, like sometimes one session can be enough to get someone off and running.
Very true. Sean, a question for you. What is the best way to find a mentor if you are changing careers and, for instance, internships or some kind of work experience wouldn't be possible for financial reasons?
Yeah, sure. Look, I think, it probably comes back to that internship sort of point that I alluded to earlier around just the expansion of opportunities there are now that are out there compared to when I came through my undergraduate degree in particular, but also just the communicate or the transparency or the communications content that's out there about various professionals that work in different sectors. LinkedIn certainly wasn't as advanced as what it is now in terms of being able to, track someone down in terms of what they do with their function, their professional responsibilities, etc., and actually using that as a bit of a tool to track, a certain person down who might link up in terms of, being a suitable mentor for someone, and especially for someone who's a mentee seeking that that person as well. So I think sort of utilising the tools and what's available now, we've just got so many of them compared to, I guess, where we were over a decade ago. So I probably think that that's a useful place to start. But I think as well, you know, one of the other things too is, you know, don't be scared to look across different, you know, sectors as well. That's pretty important. You know, you don't need to just look at people, you know, I've not done, you know, sort of tried to look at this myself, but you don't need people that are exactly where, you know, you want to be in a few years' time, although that's ideal. I think at the same time, it's important that, you know, cast your net wide if you can, and really look and take the time to research, like I mentioned, and look out, you know, and actually examine those people and what they've done. Because yeah, again, utilize the tools and actually cast your net wide would probably be the two things, Nicole, that I would say for someone in that situation.
Great advice, and definitely reflects Anna's comments too previously about looking for difference and embracing difference. So that's beautiful advice. Thank you. I'm going to address the next question to both of you, and I think this one is really interesting. So Anonymous has said, thank you to all the presenters, very insightful. Just wondering, will AI take over the role of a mentor?
That is a great question. I love it. Look, possibly, I think, I mean, I love a bit of chat GPT. So, you know, yeah, you can get a bit chatty, but I'm not sure that AI can replace that absolute deep human connection that can happen through a mentoring process. You know, when two people do come together and really slow down, listen, understand. So I would say, yes, I'm sure AI will give you lots of good pieces of advice. But no, I'm not sure it will completely replace mentoring.
Yeah, agree with Anna on that one. I think, Nicole, you know, there's just that human to human connection that arises from mentoring, you know, and coaching, of course, but mentoring as well. That, you know, I certainly, you know, looking back, and I'm sure Anna's the same, that, you know, if that was replaced by a sort of functional sort of element or something that was, you know, it would simply wouldn't be, you know, the same thing. So I guess in part, but at the same time, like Anna mentioned, it's that human connection that mentoring brings that I think really where the opportunities lie. Yeah.
Yes, and I'm not sure, perhaps also AI might be that sensitive about providing feedback. It might be
True, there's not really a moderating sort of, yeah, that's right, function. Yeah.
Sometimes a bit formulaic in its responses as well. Okay, so Anna, this next question is for you, and it was interesting because I actually had this question as you were presenting, and then promptly forgot about it. And so, a question for Anna: what would be the correct question instead of asking, "Can you be my mentor?" What would you say instead?
I think you've got to do your research. You know, so there was a really good TED talk I watched a while back that was talking about, you know, I'm not stalking you, I'm just a friend you don't know yet, you haven't met yet. But I think it's really important to do your research and look for people that, diversity absolutely, but look for people whose values align with you, the language they're using, what they're saying, you know, follow a few different people. If you're then really prepared to take the next step, which I do absolutely encourage people, because I've got another great saying, which, you know, you guarantee to know unless you ask the question. So, you know, be prepared to get a no, but be really specific about what you're looking for, not just a, can you be my mentor? It's like, why do you want that person to be your mentor? Are you looking for a change in career? Are you interested in the industry they represent? Are you really inspired by the values that they uphold? You know, are you really inspired by the achievements they've had in your career? You actually want to articulate why it is you've sought out that person so that they can then make that assessment to go, oh, okay, yes, well, I could help with that. Or, like Sean mentioned before, that beautiful ability to connect. Well, I don't think I'm the right person, but I have a great person and I'll put you two together.
Great advice. Thank you. Sean, I have a question for you, and this is really about age differential in mentoring. So, you know, as someone who was quite young and achieved a lot of things, you know, really fast out of the gate, I'm sure that you have over the years been in situations where you've mentored people who are older than you. So can you talk a little bit about what that experience is like?
Yeah, sure. It's actually, thanks, Nicole. It's a good question. I think, you know, it's probably actually not as strikingly different as you know, a lot of people imagine. I think all those characteristics that I touched on before are there. You know, they might not be in the sector that they actually want to be, you know, what they want to pursue. So they probably need some prompts or guidance there, or you know, I guess industry contacts. I think, you know, the other thing as well is, you know, where you can, if we just flip, you know, the contemplating further study characteristic, you know, that's probably something that they're not probably as interested in, but they're just needing some guidance on where, you know, if they were to do some actual, how useful would it be, and how functional would it be to help them on whatever they want to do. But all those characteristics sort of, I guess, apply, you know, the seeking experience, the needing sort of refinement when it comes to the sector in particular that they're actually seeking out, and then also just the further study element. So again, it's probably not as big a contrast on face value as what a lot of people probably perceive, Nicole, at least in my experience. Yeah.
Yeah, so sometimes it, you know, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's the barrier that it might appear to be. There's some interesting questions coming through the chat, I suppose, you know, now that we're on the topic of difference. And I wanted to open this one up both to you, Sean, and to Anna. There's a couple of questions coming through about mentoring across cultures. So if you're mentoring someone who is, you know, from overseas, is it different? And how do you tackle the cultural nuances and ensure that both perspectives are taken into account?
I might just give this one a go, Anna, then throw to you. But yeah, thanks, Nicole. That's a really good one. And, you know, I think, you know, just thinking about those boundaries that Anna had mentioned, you know, something clicked for me in terms of, you know, what I guess I'm sort of quite humble with where I begin the journey and the mentoring journey. And that's why I sort of put together, you know, those functional entry points about what's the sort of bare minimum about where you can assist. And I think that's a really good ground level place to start as a mentor, because, you know, like, let's take, for example, a cover letter or a CV, regardless of what cultural context you're in, you're going to need those tools to actually get your foot in the door. So that's why I sort of listed it as a really decent entry point to start with. And I think from there you can sort of level up and feel your way through the different cultural nuances. But that's, again, why I sort of think it's a good place to start on the ground floor, because it's a functional, you know, tool that I guess exists across a range of different cultures. Now, the language you use, all those sorts of things matters, I guess, when it comes to the next sort of stage and what's appropriate in an interview, etc. And you can work on that, of course, and give some pointers. But I think that's probably the key thing for me, is why I start there with that sort of mini boundary around what's the entry point. And, you know, I think that crosses cultures, like I mentioned. But yeah, Anna, you've probably got some definite thoughts there.
Yeah, thank you, Sean. I think, yeah, for me, it's having honest conversations, I think, around some of those cultural nuances. So it's really important, you know, to go, well, how can we make this successful? What do you need from me? You know, what do I need from you? And teasing out some of those things, because there is a necessary little bit of a power imbalance in the relationship. So again, as the mentor, making sure you make it really comfortable and easy for the mentee to give you that guidance and to give you that help about what's going to make that relationship work the best. And then I suppose, you know, I know face-to-face is great, but, you know, we do so much online now. But, you know, you still can have a fair bit of fun having, you know, so again, it's sort of, you know, let's have a cup of tea this afternoon as we have a chat through this. You know, do you want to grab a, you know, Scotch finger biscuit or something like that? But, you know, still making sure that you're getting that deep connection through online, which I think is really important as well.
Thank you both. Some really good points there. And I particularly love the idea around, you know, asking the questions, you know, in my own, coming from overseas myself, and, you know, getting my way into the Australian labour market through a mentorship partnership. The person that mentored me, you know, did a lot to kind of make the implicit stuff explicit and to explain a lot, and, you know, and to really surface those questions that I was really quite embarrassed to ask,
Yes.
and that really opened up a lot for us. So hopefully that's encouragement to those who are mentoring across cultural boundaries.
Absolutely, because I think just on that point, I think, you know, for me, it's that, concept of I'm not the expert of anything, but, I'm happy to sort of have, and I think once you release yourself from that and go, actually, I don't know how to kind of navigate this. What do I need to know? Really frees you up to have really fantastic conversations.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and kind of removing that power differential a little bit as well. And speaking about transitions, this leads me to a next question that has come through on our Q&A, and this is a question from Sarah. Do you have any specific suggestions for someone who's trying to return to their career and study after being absent for several years? So through the mentorship lens, what support might you look for at this pivotal transition? And I'll open that up to both of you.
Yeah, sure. Happy again to take a run at that, Anna, and then I'll throw to you. But I think, thanks, Sarah, for the question. I think probably something here, is just really looking at, I think, the journey that, I guess that person's been on, or Sarah, if it's in your instance, for example, and where did you sort of stop? What's the gap in terms of where things have been in your sector, and actually doing, like Anna mentions, do the study, do the work, but actually perhaps, more functionally do a bit of a gap analysis about where things are, and obviously a lot of industries have high obsolescence, low obsolescence. So it really just depends, you can step away for a while and then come back into it. But whereas, for those sectors that are just changing rapidly, that gap analysis is going to look pretty wide. So I think, whatever situation the person's in, being able to work out, and actually dive in, do the research and think, about. And I think the other thing too is just, like, don't be scared to reach out to people, and, I think as well, again, there's so many tools available where you can actually find people where you go, okay, wow, I really like what that company's doing. Who's actually there? Can I get you a coffee? This is my situation. And once you do that, you really build, start to build a decent connection where that person will be thinking about you and your situation, whatever context you're in, and they know your story as well. And you'd be surprised what that can actually achieve if you actually explain where you're at and your circumstances, that you might not be jogging on the spot and ready to go now, but that you could be, in a few months' time, or if the opportunity arises, the right opportunity, you've at least built that connection with someone. And I think, people would be very surprised to, when you start reaching out to people, just how touched they are, to be approached, but approached in the right sort of way, and they will think of you. But yeah, Anna, you've got probably some thoughts there as well.
Yeah, I think that's a really fantastic point, Sean, about, doing your research, understanding where you're at, and approaching people looking at options and phrasing it like, I'm looking at what my options are now. Because I think it's really good when you've got an opportunity to think, those kind of change points in your life, which way am I going? It's a really fantastic opportunity to dig deep and to think about things that you might not have thought of before. And I think as we all get a bit older, that stuff, what do we really, really like to do? What really fires us up? What have I not seen that I can, maybe have a bit of a shift now? I think it's, very exciting time. And I think as part of that, again, LinkedIn makes it so easy to connect, which is brilliant. Really, using all the tools at your disposal, reaching out, you're doing some research, this is what you're thinking, get the information, because it's all those tidbits of information that others will give you that might, again, set you off on a different path.
Yeah, that's beautiful advice. Both of you, thank you. Anna, I'd like to stay with you for just a second, because there's a question that's come through, which is asking, how do you know if you need a mentor or a coach to address your particular needs?
Very good question. So I would say if a coach is more around like a specific behavior or habit that you want to accelerate, amplify, maybe diminish. So coaching a lot in the executive space is, I want to move from, one level up to a next level. I want to be a more influential leader. I want to know how I can develop my negotiation and influencing skills. So it would need to be, a fairly clear goal that you have about, in some people, I want to be a manager within 12 months, something like that. Whereas if it's a bit more of a holistic question and you kind of not necessarily what am I doing with my life, but, I'm at a particular point in my career, I have options, I'm really pleased with where I've been, but I think there's other things out there that I could be moving into, but I'm not sure what they look like. then that to me is more of a mentor type question that you want to build that.
Fantastic. That's great advice. Sean, I'm going to turn to you with this next one, which kind of looks at some of those boundaries that we might set around the mentor-mentee partnership. So it has been rightfully mentioned that the mentor-mentee relationship is professional in its focus, but to build a deeper, more honest connection with a mentee, how far beyond professionalism should you go as a mentor to work with your mentee effectively?
Yeah, thanks, Nicole. Look, it's a really good point, and I'm glad you've both mentioned it, but Anna in particular, about setting the sort of boundaries and that relationship being really important. I think it does get a bit tricky, when you can, hang out with mentees, who are roughly your age, or I guess in proximity, in terms of what sort of social things they like to do and the different networks they're involved in. But I think, probably the best thing to do is just to keep that in the back of your head about the professionalism around the relationship. One of the really good things at Griffith, and every time you take on a new mentee, not that you get but you get reminded of the obligations too, and actually setting out the agreement. And I sort of try keep the same agreement from, and sequence it out from mentee to mentee. But that's just a nice, gentle reminder that you're part of a broader structure here where there's responsibilities and expectations. It's not hugely prescriptive, but I think it's just a really nice small administrative device to just, remind you of the difference and the expectations there. So I think that probably springs to mind for me, Nicole, is actually, getting an agreement in place that works well. But, and I don't write War and Peace in my agreements. We just set mini sort of goals and, we're quite humble with them. But having at least that, that formal side of things does give a bit of a boundary, Nicole. But that for me springs to mind there as something that helps.
Yeah, that's a great tip, setting in that structure and
Yep.
putting the goals out in front. I think that makes a great deal of sense.
Yeah. And I think I'd just love to add something on that too, the importance of then having check-ins on the quality of the relationship. So, it's not necessarily an open-ended, but, every quarter, do you want to have a check-in? How's this working? You getting value? Am I? How are me? Just doing that more holistic check, I think, is really important, because that can then determine, do we need to kind of recap on what our boundaries were, or is the relationship actually moving into a friendship and the mentoring piece maybe stops?
Yeah, that's a great point, Anna. And it also leads into a couple of questions that have come through around engagement in the partnership. So there's a couple of questions in one around how do you in organizations get people to stop seeing this as a tick and flick activity, but then also how do you revitalize the relationship, if the engagement has dropped off? And so I'd love to throw it to both of you to see, how do you keep the love alive, for lack of a better term?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think, I always think, as much as I very much always prepare thoughtfully for coaching, mentoring, etc., like that, there's a sense of me that if I'm having to work too hard, something's not quite right, because I'm not the one who's sort of sort out the relationship or the goals, or so that always makes me sort of stop and have a little think about what's going on. And then I think it is, if people aren't turning up to meetings or not respecting time, or some of those communication channels you've set up are getting a bit fuzzy, just doing a bit of check-in to go, is this really right for you at the moment? And, sometimes it's not. As I said, like sometimes I've had to stop coaching because they need some more emotional support. So, it's really important to say, well, this isn't the only channel. Maybe not, it's not right for you at this point in time. Have a bit of a think about that, and, just have that really honest conversation.
Yeah, those are really good points, Hannah. And I think, at the same time, conversely for me, think of it, sometimes it's thinking about where you can drop the sort of boundary as well. And I mean that in the sense that one thing that, and I'm not saying everyone has to do this as part of the program, but I always say to my mentees that, look, just because the time horizon stops and the formality sort of and the cycle ends, that it doesn't mean it's the end of the relationship at all. I still have, mentees who will call me up from 6-8 years ago who just need some quick fire advice, and I really like it because it's like we haven't spoken in a while, and that's totally fine, but they're able to have that trust to reach out and say, hey Sean, I'm at this little fork in the road, can I just get your quick fire advice? And I'm able to assist that way. So it's kind of thinking that even though there's a time horizon to the formal side of things, that you can collapse the boundary and keep that relationship alive without it being too labor intensive, and where it's drawing upon your resources as a mentor, but you've at least got that trust and that affinity that you can connect and keep the love alive, I guess beyond the formalities and certainly beyond a certain sort of time scale or horizon. Nicole. Yeah.
Great, thank you both. One more question, well, actually 2 more questions, but one more that I'd like to throw to both of you. And, over the session, we've explored a lot of positives about mentoring. Is there a negative side to being a mentor? Is there a downside?
I think sometimes it is around time commitment, and that it'd be lovely to help and support as many people as you can, but again, it's that time is finite. So that's, I mean, it's that we've all kind of got to work or run your own practice, but it's also lovely to be able to give back. But what's the balance in there? So that can sometimes get a bit out of whack, I think, which can possibly be a negative. And I suppose the other thing, and that when we were talking about partnerships before and that longer term relationship that develops, negative, I suppose, is when someone, and you can absolutely sense it, is looking at the relationship as fairly like transactional, tick and flick. I'll get that and then I'll get that, or I'll get that and then I'll get a board role, or I'll get, and that it doesn't actually get into that really deep connection. And as much as you can try, it's just not something that person is particularly open to. So I think I love working with people who are really happy to go deep and have loads of self-awareness and be a bit vulnerable and gets a bit messy and things like that, but take a risk and have a crack. But yes, I think when people are looking at it as a very transactional relationship, it's probably that's certainly something that dulls my fire in a mentoring relationship.
Yeah, I guess probably in addition to that, those are great points, Anna, for sure. And, I think it's probably nothing that really springs to mind for me, especially like Anna mentioned, if you're setting those clear boundaries and those expectations, then you sort of hopefully won't get into that space where, or that negative kind of territory. I think one of the things that's just, very quickly that jumps out to me is just when you're mentoring someone who's probably not the right fit in where they are at the moment, and they probably don't quite get that or understand it. And I think that that's that honesty that Anna's touched on and talked about, how honest can you be with the person, and can you nudge them in the right sort of direction as well without being too, I guess, too strict or too rigorous in how you feed back to them. So I think that's probably one of the things that does pop up every now and then, is just that problem fit, and actually, are they actually going to listen to your advice about, taking advantage of whatever time they've got there, whether it's, doing training courses, seeing the transferable skills that they might be able to pick up in the situation that they're in, but actually getting them into the place or the sector or the industry or the role that they're probably more suited for. So it doesn't quite entirely answer the question, but that's for me what sprung to mind, Nicole, when thinking about negative or poor fits and that sort of thing, and the downside of some things. Yeah.
But still turning the negative into a positive, which is great.
Yeah.
All right, one last question for you both. Now we've explored, a little bit of the negative side, and I really wanted us to end on a high today. So I would love it if you would both share your most memorable experience as a mentor. Who's going to go first?
Well, I certainly have one. So yeah, it was during my time at Brisbane City Council, and I'd had just a relationship with a girl. She was in another division, but we had connected and talked, I think, at a women's function for BCC, and it just developed into a mentoring relationship where she actually went off and walked away from being a town planner and went off to be a librarian. And it was the kind of the delight and the joy that came out of us sort of talking through various things that made her really realize that she wasn't doing a job that she loved. And what really fired her off was the librarian. So it was just that sort of stuff where someone is absolutely, has this sort of flash of insight and then that beautiful inspiration to go chase after a dream and the actual achieving of the dream. I think that, it gives me goosebumps when I think about it. That was a fabulous experience.
Yeah, lovely. I think probably mine's sort of quite similar to Anna's. It wasn't sort of, like one exact sort of moment, perhaps. It was probably just something that's taken place over a period of time. But look, I do remember, oh gosh, I think it was probably 4 or 5 years into my mentoring journey. And, I had an individual who, wanted to join the Foreign Affairs Department and become a diplomat, and, had seen my trajectory, and we obviously had a lot of affinity there. And I think, with that one, I knew that like all that was needed wasn't a huge amount of mentoring. It was just a little bit of guidance. And I like to sort of think that just that small amount of guidance was able to push him into the right sort of direction. And, and it's very satisfying to see someone do well professionally, and I think probably even surpass you in some respects. So I won't mention their name, but like I think that's just deeply satisfying to sort of see someone that you've been able to just give some guidance to, or mentor, that just does really well, and your advice actually helps them out. So I've been fortunate to have that a few times, but that one case in particular sticks out to me as something that's just been, just absolutely tremendous, and I guess why you sort of stay motivated to stay involved, Nicole. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Beautiful. Those are beautiful, proud mentor moments, and definitely the stuff of great engagement as well. Thank you both so much. I've learned a tremendous amount from listening to you both today, and having the opportunity to learn from you both has been wonderful. And now I'm just going to run through our closing. And it's for our audience today. You are all now well versed in being a master mentor. And so we're excited to announce that in the coming weeks, we will be introducing a new platform that offers you the chance to become a mentor, a mentee, or both. And this platform will help you connect with our global community of accomplished alumni. No matter where you currently stand in your career, our Alumni to Alumni Mentoring Program, or AMP for short, is designed to support your growth. Mentees will benefit from connecting with alumni who are committed to supporting their professional journey, and mentors will benefit through leadership development, supporting fellow Griffith alumni seeking career guidance. Last night, our Vice Chancellor launched the university's philanthropic campaign, the campaign to create a brighter future for all. Our aspiration of a brighter future for all also includes how we best engage the talents and motivations of our alumni, the largest part of our Griffith community. As a result, we aim to have 100,000 meaningful engagements with our alumni through the campaign, building on opportunities for volunteering, mentoring, networking, and communications. So we welcome and encourage your participation in AMP, giving you the opportunity to have a meaningful and positive impact on a fellow graduate. You will receive a launch email soon to sign up, so keep your eye on your inbox. Expressions of interest are also now open, so you can fill in your details by clicking on the link in the chat function now. I'm sorry I didn't get to all of the questions, so we'll look to respond to those in our post-event email. A reminder that this webinar was recorded, so we can go back and rewatch and relearn all of the insights, and we'll email out the link to this recording in a few weeks' time, so you can watch again, share with your friends, and catch anything that you happen to miss. We will also send a follow-up email in a few days asking for your feedback on this session. This is also a great opportunity to submit some ideas for future topics for other events like these. We will have our last webinar for 2023 very soon, a new topic. So keep your eyes peeled, because this will be about something that we touched on today, artificial intelligence. Please keep your eyes peeled, as I said, for an invitation coming to that very soon. Our most recent webinar, NAIDOC 2023 Griffith Alumni Perspectives with Griffith alumni Dr. Candace Kruger, Uncle John Graham, and Eric Kruger is now available on our YouTube channel. If you subscribe to the channel, you'll never miss out. That's Griffith University Alumni and Giving, and there's also a link on the alumni website. Again, a huge thank you to Anna and Sean for sharing your time and your expertise with us today. And thank you to everyone also attending online. I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.